All right, Mike, how's it going?
Good, Frank. Good to see you.
Same here.
Another week, another time of where we get together and have our little perspective shift
Yeah.
broadcast.
Yeah, we create our own reality.
Love it.
No one gets to tell us what we can say. It's funny because a lot of people are like, I'll bring it up, like, hey, what are you going to talk about this week? And I'm like, I have no idea. But it's I tell them, it's like you get into this field of energy, and that's why we do the meditations prior.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it evokes something to talk about. And, we always make these stories up because we're storytellers. Let me swing around here a little bit. We always make up these stories, and one is like, oh, I have to talk about this because this is needed. I saw it in the news. And again, it's still the same story because the news is all made up. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You said that earlier.
Well,
Right?
it's funny.
If you think the news is made up, what is history?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I saw that running through the internet, and I started laughing, and I was like, that is so true.
Yeah.
Because, if you think the news is fake, imagine what history is. And I just started laughing, and I was like, it's a bunch of stories that we all carry around.
Yeah, because I was thinking about writing a novel on history.
Mm-hmm.
No, Mike, you know me, I'm joking. But I'm actually going to start it from 1967.
I thought you were going to play along a little bit longer.
Because I have images of myself and memories came in a little after because I was born in 1967.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone writes about history beyond the point in which they were experiencing it, it's very interesting how they come up with the information, how it was. And like, this is the truth. I'm like, yeah, you really went there. And what I mean is a different frequency set. So you can actually be there, but when you go there, you're already putting your perspective on the historical event that happened. So you actually changed history forever. So everyone's trying to go, this is the true history. I'm like, that's your perspective of the true history. And all truths are what?
True.
Thank you. So we just like to mess around with that. So me and Mike are going to create history tonight.
Every night.
Yeah, every night.
Well, we're all creating our history, and that's why it's so funny when we look back and we act like, so we're so serious about everything that occurs in our life.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, this is happening to me, and
can't believe
well,
it.
it's because we're living through the person, not through the awareness.
Yeah.
And so when we're down in the trenches and we're feeling this pain, and we think there's no other option but to feel it, it's so real. But when you understand that you can detach from that emotion and see that emotion for what it is, simply a chemical reaction in your body and a meaning you have assigned to it.
Yeah.
You can see the operating system for what's going on, and it allows you to detach from the feeling. And you're like, whoa, this space, this peace, this tranquility, this is what I was looking for.
Yeah, and all the emotions, we're not telling people by any means to be emotionless, but when you understand is like when you get caught up in your own persona, you think that's all there is, and there's this panic. There's this major underlining theme of panic in your life, which can go into depression or into anxiety, depending if you're looking in the past to the future. What Mike is talking about is when you separate, you don't dull the feeling or the emotions. You actually heighten them in a more preferential way. Yeah.
But like a big thing is seeing emotion for what it is.
Yeah.
It's simply emotion. It's not you. Just because you feel angry does not mean you must attach to that anger. As soon as you recognize that feeling, you understand, okay, my operating system associates this feeling with anger. This is how I have always interpreted. When you can see that operating system, you no longer allow that view to fog your glasses, if you will.
Yeah, and let's go into clarifying when we say who you really are. So that's
Formless.
And again,
Not
yeah.
male, not female.
And this is something me and Mike are going to talk about tonight. But what we're talking about is only from the metaphorical level. There is no way I can say something, explain it to where you'll fully get it. But what will happen is it will lead you into having the experience. Unless you fully experience who you truly are, the words here aren't going to give you that feeling. What I mean is, so I'm going to attempt to say, who are we? We're actually the observer and the energy field all at once. So when you're observing something, like a director sitting in their director chair, they're observing the scene, and they're also conducting the energy. They get to call cut, action, bring in the props. So as the director is directing everything else, the field becomes formed in the preferential way. And if they lose track of it, they just simply say cut. And when they gain the energy and they're ready, okay, everyone on the set ready, and action. We are that director. But yet we're still in the field having the experience and the emotion, the energy and motion. So we're all of that. But when you forget who you really are as a director, all of a sudden it seems like this, you can't get a grasp of what's actually happening on. And then panic and depression, everything starts to set in. But it really is a fulfillment of an experience. And that's what we're here. We're here on Earth to have an experience with the energy in a preferential way. And one of the other topics we're going to fall in tonight is programming. And over the years, there have been a lot of people coming out, and they've done it to help humanity, but they're like, hey, we need to reset your programming. You got to change your programming. You got to set a new programming. Well, me and Mike are talking about a higher level where we don't need programming, because when you're in a conscious state, programming is no longer needed, via good, via bad. It doesn't matter.
It's seen.
Yes. But so when I look at this, I'll take a device like a phone. I think the Google phone is like this, where it has no memory storage capability on the phone. So everything is pulled from what they call the cloud. So when you're in a conscious state, you're always pulling everything from the cloud, or we call the matrix or the Akashic records, where all the information you need to obtain in the instant which you need it is already there. But if you start storing information in your hard drive, that's old history. Why are you doing that? But if I stay present, I become momentarily tapped into the field, and everything I need to know, I will know. This is what people call spontaneity. Life can only be lived in spontaneity. Now, we could play the game of, I prepared myself for this spontaneous moment. I'm like, no, because through that preparation, those little bits of spontaneity, you just labeled it as time. It took me 5 years to figure out the quantum field. No, it took you an instant to find out the quantum field. You just did something other than doing that for the last 5 years, kind of like Edison. He didn't fail 10,000 times, 1,000 times. He just did something different than the moment in which he figured out the light bulb. It was just something different. But then he's like, oh, I'm done with this. And it spontaneously came. He found the right filament for the lens and the right nitrogen, whatever he put in the light bulb. I'm not really familiar with that. And then it came, and then he was done. Then from there, he could just perhaps enhance the materials. But everything he did before that, I wouldn't even call a failure. He was just doing something different.
Well,
he did 10,000 different things.
Well, it's funny because that's the truth.
But they were all
everything it comes. It's at an instant.
Yes.
It's never, it's because I trekked along doing this, that.
Yeah.
That's the story, guys. That's the subconscious mind. We always need to attach why something's occurring. And when you're aware to that, and you rest as the awareness, and you see, I don't have to hold on to all of this. This is why people get so mentally exhausted, and so tired throughout the day, is because we think we need to remember things. We think we need to hold on to these ideas. Otherwise, our life's going to fall apart. No. It will never fall apart.
And that's why I always have this issue with Karen. And she's like, I need more foreplay. I'm like, why can't we just have spontaneous combustion? And they're like, how much foreplay do we need?
Oh, that's so funny.
Another kick out to Karen there.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
God,
awesome.
Yeah.
No, but truthfully, it's the idea that we're doing something is a very human being concept.
Yeah.
We're not doing anything, guys. We're witnessing, we're experiencing.
That's
everything has happened now.
Now. And when you do that, you step out of the field of programming. And you literally get into the field of consciousness. And when you're in a state of consciousness, you're attached to
the person.
Call it the matrix, the Akashic records, whatever it is. It's almost like when your phone is on, it's attached to the cloud. So I could sit there and, like, I was telling this to Mike, I'm like, so say I remember an actor in a certain movie and I write it in my notes on my phone, all right? And then a couple of weeks go by and I'm talking to somebody about them. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know that guy's name. And then I'm scrolling to look for it in my notes where they're like, just Google it. It's instant when you Google it. No, I know I have it somewhere. And I'm flicking through the phone. Just Google it. You don't need to look it up. Like, when you Google, it's an instant way into the information, the field of information. When you're present, you are actually connected to this information. And the more present we become, or more in tune with presence we become, and we heighten the sense, the pineal gland, that we like to call the pineal gland, the connection to this, it heightens, and the more information comes in. So we can have information coming quicker and rattle off. Eventually, our minds will be like an auctioneer type of thing, but it's not necessary.
And that pineal gland that Frank's referencing, that's a transmitter. So
it's a transmitter, transceiver.
Yeah. When Frank and I, when we meditate, like before sitting down to, do a chat like this, we're getting on that level that we're talking about. And when I mean getting on that level, I mean allowing ourselves to simply be in the moment. And it's crazy. You don't need to attain anything. You don't need to, search for anything. It's more so allowing everything to simply be. And that's how you get onto this frequency or your true self. It's a letting go of everything and no thought, no being, no form, no idea, no vision. That's the self.
Yeah, and so I challenge everyone out there listening to this, and I do this every day with myself. I have to remind myself every day. But no matter what you're doing, if you're in front of a large audience presenting something, or at work presenting something, or coming to an unfamiliar territory, what happens, we start to overthink, and what happens, we get into that high beta state. We start to get nervous. But I reach out to you and say, try to actually approach everything as if you're having a cup of coffee with your best friend. And when you're driving to the coffee shop or wherever you're having this, you're not anticipating or thinking other than you're getting exciting. And then you don't rehearse what you're going to say. Hey, Mike, how's everything going? And then Mike jumps in, hey, would you like coffee? Oh, I'm not done with my speech. I can please sit down. You don't do that with a friend that you're really good friends with. You just jump into it. So if you approach life this way, in this present state, because when you're with a true friend, you no longer care about how your hair looks. You don't care about any of that stuff. You lose yourself in the field, and the conversation becomes fluid, or what people call real.
And Frank just pointed out, again, a method of the conditioning. We go through school and everything where it's like, oh, you got a presentation. You must practice. Have you practiced? Oh, you haven't practiced? How will you ever be successful?
Then you sit in front of the mirror. Hi, class.
Yes.
How's it going?
Oh, and so what we're talking about, everything, guys, that we're experiencing life is some sort of a social conditioning, a mental conditioning, a physical conditioning. Every moment from when you open your eyes and you're in the waking state, you got your subconscious thoughts playing. And then after that, it's what you've trained your body, how you get up, when you use the bathroom, when you take a shower, how you get dressed. Everything is a program. And when you start to see all of this for what it is, you can start to tweak the program and allow yourself
step out of the program.
To be.
Yeah, so you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth, and we're not talking you out of it, but if you actually grab the toothpaste and feel the sensation of the tube as you squeeze it, and feel the paste and landing on the toothbrush, and you literally listen to the sound and the feel of it going across your teeth, you're present. But most people don't even, did I brush my teeth?
Because they're on to the next thought.
Did
that's
I put
where
the
we
coffee
stay
pot
all day.
on? Yeah.
We stay, did I do this?
Yeah, so that's the programming. What me and Mike are talking about, still have your coffee, still have fun, do all these things, brush your teeth, go to work. But when you're present, and it's, people say, when I'm present, the day goes by quick. And I'm like, don't even look for the day to go by quick. Why do we want to get rid of the day? Like, children don't play in the playground like, man, that day went quick. they're like kind of pissed when they realize the sun came. I mean, the sun went down, the street lights went on. That's how it was when I was a kid. If the street lights were on and we weren't home, we got yelled at, you know? And we got yelled at because they thought someone took us. I'm like, well, if you're going to yell at me, I might as well have somebody take me.
Seriously.
They might be nicer.
Might be nice.
They offered me a box of chocolates.
Get in this van,
yeah,
little
don't
boy.
get chocolates when I come home.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm sorry we got sidetracked there, but that's what life is. It's one big sidetrack.
It is, and we just assign meaning to it.
Yeah, that's it.
And then we're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
can you believe this happened? Yes, I can. You have an extremely restless mind.
Yeah.
Anytime I'm talking with people now and they're going on about these crazy stories, you won't believe what happened to me.
Yeah.
You can just see how restless the mind is. And it's so funny because it's like,
It's
I
like-
know that feeling so well.
Yeah, it's almost like someone has the TV on, but there's no one watching it. You know?
Yeah,
And
I know
then-
what you mean.
And then when I was a kid, if the TV was on in the house and
Blaring.
nobody was watching it, my dad would lose his shit. Like if there was lights on, like, hey, why's your light on in your room? Because I'm about to enter there. I'm like, but you're not there yet. That's a switch. It goes on instantly. God damn it, when you leave the room, turn the TV off. So it was like the man like monitored like every action that was going on because like, yeah, it does. But like I was too lazy to hit that switch. But I don't do it. Now I do it, but with my son. I'm like, why's your light on? And he just looks at me. He's wise. He just walks over and he turns it off. He doesn't say a word. And I'm like, thank you. And he just shakes his head. But I got programmed to be like that. But then I come out of it consciously and I start laughing. But it's true. We get caught up in this thing. And there's no right or wrong here. Because when you're in a conscious state, you'll only do what's right for the field around you. And that means you and the people around you. And this right thing to do isn't something that can be scripted at all. So people always ask me, hey, if I'm in a situation like this, what should I do? I'm like, I can't answer that until you're in the situation. And only you can answer it. What I can tell you is take a couple of deep breaths, get present, and you'll know what to do. But if I tell you what to do prior to the incident happening, you're going to force the incident, and whatever I tell you to do is not going to work. So I go, Frank, that did not work. Well, what'd you do?
Weird.
I did everything you told me. But this weird thing happened that I didn't see coming. And I'm like, yeah, because you have to be there. We're very responsive beings. If we're actually, pineal gland is connected to the source, if you will. That's what I call the Google, cloud Google. Its source, if it's connected, it will instantly tell you what to say, what to do, or what not to say. It works that brilliant. So I no longer study anymore.
It's funny. I listen to my intuition a lot on the what not to say.
Yeah.
Because what I've realized, it's like when you're like what I was just talking about. Okay, so this is funky, but I'm going to say it. So everything that we experience is a reflection of us. Everything, guys.
It is.
Yeah. Everything. Down to Frank and me, and I know he knows this about me to him. This is a construct of our mind, construct of our thoughts. And so as you dive into this, you start to see that by reacting to the outside world, it's like a dog chasing its tail. So for you to react about what's going on out here is so illogical because it all stems from in here. So I can't look at something out in the what I see, what I call reality, and judge it or get upset by it because I have ultimately created it, and I fully know this.
Yeah.
And it starts to change everything because you no longer will go up to people and be like, oh, you got to know about this mindfulness. No.
Yeah.
Again, that's me chasing my own tail. Like, what do I get from that? Am I standing on, am I preaching? Is it from an ego, like a self-fulfilling thing? Is it and I try to dissect the situation and I'm like, okay. And so what I've realized now is I look at this world around me simply to learn about myself and see myself as a mirror and begin to question things that come up. So when a funky emotion comes up, I no longer get shameful about it or upset. I'm like, I dive in and I'm like, what do I need to learn about myself? And where I'm kind of going with this, and this is something I really wanted to talk about tonight, was what is karma and the meaning of karma? Because a lot of people out there think karma is, oh, I did something bad, so something bad happened to me. Or I did something good, and so something good should happen to me. And that's not so much what it is. Karma's more like you have a natural like insecurity, let's say. And so you're going to continue to experience situations that showcase your insecurities, where you see them playing out. And karma is this interactive experience where it's your inner fears, it's your inner thoughts, it's your fantasies dancing in real life, playing out in real life in front of us. And that's what this wheel of karma really is.
Yeah, and then so karma is there's several ways of breaking this down. I like talking about this subject because people ask me, what is karma? Well, karma is someone labeled this thing karma, and no one could really put their finger on it. So I call karma Newtonian physics. Classic
Okay.
physics. So there's a predictability. So if you stay in a state of joy, you're going to experience joy. If you stay in a state of fear, you're going to experience fear. But there's also a state called grace. And once you understand that you're creating the karmic effect by your emotions, you fall into grace and you can wipe out any residual karmic aspect of the fear you had a second ago.
I like how you said
You
that.
can stop it moment in a time. And so then, like, if you want to break it down, and again,
You're talking about seeing the game play out.
yes, once you see the game play out for what it is, like you mentioned earlier, you no longer have the residual, the echo of the karma. So that's what it is. If I leave my house in a shitty mood, I'm going to, at the end of the day, have a diagram of a shitty day. If I leave my house in a great mood, I'm going to continue that perpetuation of a great mood. That's the karmic aspect. But with grace, it's understanding it. So karmic is almost like good luck, bad luck. Some days you have it, some days you don't. But when you understand grace, you're the one actually kicking the dog that bit your foot. You're the one shoving your foot in the dog's mouth as it chomps on. You're the one in control here. And that is grace. When you understand that, you wipe out that field. So karmic energy is almost like programmed energy. Another way to twist this in.
I like that.
So, hey, you want to do really well on this? Do this, this, and this. You do it every day, all day long. Program, yes, it's trying to advance you to a better place, but it will still fall short because it's still
A program.
a noose around my neck.
Well, I like how you said that.
You just lengthened the rope. That's all you did.
Because when you're caught in the karma, good or bad, non-preferential, preferential, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, when you're caught in it, you're still in the operating system. The
Yes.
point that Frank and I are talking about is we want to see above the operating system, understand, oh, okay, I see what's going on
Yeah.
here. That's really the key, because then you're resting as awareness. You can't see the self. That's like saying the eyeball to see the eye, or seeing the eyeball
Yeah,
with
the
seeing,
tip of the tongue
hearing
tasting
with
the tip of the
hearing.
tongue,
Yeah,
yeah.
It's not that.
And the thing is because you can't do it, guess what? It's not necessary.
Yeah.
It's if it was necessary for the tip of my finger to touch the tip of the finger, I would have the capacity to do it.
Well, that's like kind of the funny part. That's why it's like a dog chasing its tail.
Yeah.
We're what we're searching for is where we're searching from.
And if someone could look at the dog, is it necessary for you to catch your tail? No, it's attached to you behind.
Speaking of that, I loved what you shared with me today about the tree falling in the woods. You mind bringing that up?
Oh, the quantum.
Yeah, because this is great.
Yeah.
I want to talk about it.
So, the question's been asked so many times about, and I don't know if people bring it up too much, but I heard it years ago. But if a tree were to fall in a forest and there was no observer, would the tree create noise? And the answer is no. Because it would create a vibrating frequency, but the ears on the human beings create noise. So when it picks it up and the eardrum vibrates, it actually creates noise. So without the observer, there is no noise. But there was a frequency. But the frequency can be a taste, it can be a touch, it can be a sight, it can be a hearing, it can be a feeling. So it has all these different translations. So our body, we have nerve endings, so when I touch something, I can feel it. I have nerve endings on my tongue, so when I put something in my mouth, I can taste it. My eyes and my visual cortex with the lens and the light has to be able to see it. And then obviously the ears can hear it.
And this is super powerful, guys, because what Frank is describing is truly what we are. We are an instrument of consciousness. We are taste, see, smell, touch, everything at once. And without it, we're nothing.
Yeah.
And so it's all or nothing, and we're everything at once.
And look, look at your body. If you want to envision your body, look at your tangible corporeal body as a Bluetooth ultimate machine. And what I mean is, when you get into this state of consciousness and grace where you're fully present, whatever comes through me isn't coming from my ego. It's coming through me, not from the corporeal stuff. And what I mean is, if you have a Bluetooth speaker and there's music coming through it, well, the music is coming through the Bluetooth speaker, not from it.
Exactly what Frank
Whoever
meant.
wrote the song, it's transmitting and being received and coming out of it. That's what we are. So we have all these five senses that when we stay in field with the tune, all those five senses are responses of what's coming through me. So when I'm fully in tune with source, whatever comes through me is pure. But what happens is when you disconnect yourself from source, you become a broken record. You keep repeating over and over the program in which you recorded.
Karma.
Keep doing this.
Experiencing what you're thinking and feeling.
Somebody,
Experiencing what you're thinking
you
and
ever
feeling.
run into somebody and they always say the same joke?
Yeah, that's like a grandpa or like an uncle.
Do you have anything original?
Yeah.
But if you're present, everything is original.
It's never happened at that time.
It's never happened
ever.
again. But what's funny and weird about recreating a scene in trying to make it original, it never works. And that's why the brilliance of, like, you see a great movie with great actors playing in it. And the greatest scenes that ever lived, we find out later on that the director let them just ad-lib it, let it go. They gave him a parameter. What's my motivation? They gave him motivation.
Classic.
They gave him a couple guidelines in with the wording and stuff like that. But then they went in for it, and then they're like, cut. That was brilliant. There's no way we're going to,
They were the Bluetooth speaker.
Yeah, and they tapped in, but it was spontaneous. It was never done before. And even when musicians practice, they get on stage and it's 1, 2, 3, bam. It's spontaneous. They've never done it before in that fashion, ever. But when you have a recording, you keep playing it over and over. And if there's a little, I'm dating myself, but if you have a record player, like a record, and there's a little scratch in it, that will always, it can get worse, and during the song, it'll pop in there. You'll hear that. It's constant recording. But if you spontaneity and do it what we call live every time, it's different. That's why you can go watch a band live infinite amount of times. But how often can you listen to that same song on that same record player before you're like, oh, okay, this is getting old, Because we are spontaneous beings. We came spontaneous. It was a spontaneous combustion with no foreplay. No.
Without them.
Karen's like, would you stop it with that? And all of a sudden we were created and we were inseminated. And then it happened. It was, everything's like that. The Big Bang. People are trying to figure out what the Big Bang. It was a spontaneous movement of combustion. Now, physicists will actually explain the particles of dust and came out from all the stars and yada yada and did that. And that's all great. I haven't studied that. But it literally happened like that. Because an explosion is spontaneous. It's not like, and then the after effect of the explosion onto itself is spontaneity as well. It's spontaneous. Everything is spontaneous. So trying to replicate something and make it spontaneous, it's like, it's a little off. And this is where we get out of rhythm, out of sync. But when you can constantly stay there and stay in the field and listen to it, people are like, man, you're quick. I'm like, no, I'm present. If everyone learns to be present, everyone's quick. It's the truth. Practice presence, and you'll know exactly what to say. You know, like a lot of times I'll tilt it. I won't even think about humor. And all of a sudden, someone will say something, and I'll just say something, and people laugh. But I wasn't waiting for that humor. I was just present. Now, there were times when I wasn't present, and someone said something, and I'm like, oh. And then you want to say it. Then you have to tell the friend, like, hey, remember that thing you said? Wouldn't it have been funny if I said this? But now I sound like an idiot because the time has passed. Like, stop, leave it alone. But then I'm like pissed. Now I'm really not present.
This is what we do.
This is what we do.
This is what we do.
Man, I should have said this. I should have said this.
That's us driving home from work after your boss came in and asked you to stay after work to finish up something that he should have been doing, or she should have been doing.
Yeah.
All of these guys, that's it. Recognize that frustration, that voice in your head. See it for how ridiculous it is.
Yeah.
When you take away the attachment and you don't hold on to the no one should treat me like this. Oh, guys, that right there is the identity. It's the character. It's the reason. It's what we want to detach from and separate and realize that you're none of that.
Yeah.
My boss comes in, asks me to stay 30 minutes longer. No problem.
Yeah, and that's the program.
Probably only take you 10 minutes anyways.
Yeah, that's the program. And so I want to touch on this. So as we move into a different conscious state of human beings, and when people are present, all right? So I'm going to bring a couple of subjects that are kind of touchy right now. And once something's done, you can go back and look at and change the perception of it. Now, at some level, you can change the history, but I don't want to get into that right now because that's a whole nother conversation.
There's a lot of layers.
There's a lot of layers, and I don't want to just throw it out there and confuse people. Because I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, what? And then over time, I'm like, oh, I get it. But let's take the George Floyd incident where, what's the police officer's name?
Derek Chauvin.
Derek Chauvin. So he had his knee on his neck, the back of his neck, for 8.5 minutes.
9.5, almost 10.
Almost 10 minutes, all right? Now, from what I don't follow the news a lot, but I'm also not living under a rock. I'm aware of what's going on. So there were a lot of people around, a lot of people recording it, and a lot of people asked that weren't there, why didn't anyone do anything? Why didn't anyone jump in? Why didn't anyone do something? Well, for one, because most people that are around are programmed. So the programmer has already stated, if I rush a cop with several other cops around me, I am going to get my ass shot. No one wants that program because they know how it's going to fall out. But yet, there were people feeling comfortable enough to scream out words at the guy, degrading him, getting him off. Get off, you asshole, this and that.
Pig.
Yeah, exactly. Hear all that stuff. But what's interesting, and it's going to seem a little uncomfortable to some people, and I 100% know this would happen, but I can't prove it because the course already ran its course. But if someone got close enough to the officer without creating any harm or attackability to the officer, and just simply looked at the officer and said, I know you're having a bad day. Let's talk about this. You're loved. Something along those lines, and took the attention onto the officer to a higher level, the knee would have came off the back of his neck. But we're not programmed to think that way. And the reason I bring this up is because when I was younger, I was telling Mike this story. I was in a situation, I was 18 years old. Now, mind you, my background is I was trained as a young child to fight, boxing. My dad raised me, first thing I remember is throwing punches. So I had this fighting mentality. So it was already programmed in me. Again, it's a program. So here I am, 18 years old. I'm leaving the beach. I'm leaving Jones Beach. And like if there was 100 people leaving, there was 1,000. It was just mobbed. And as I'm walking, there's like a tunnel you go underneath on the Meadowbrook Parkway to get to the parking lot that separates the beach so you can walk under. There was this huge guy, like 250, freaking bodybuilder dude, freaking throwing his girlfriend or wife at the time like a rag doll around. And I looked around, nobody was doing anything. And something kicked into me, and I bull rushed this guy, and I grabbed his leg. I almost fucking died. The guy hit me in the back of the head. I blacked out. He started kicking me around like a rag doll. Mm-hmm. And people like, when I told people the story, like, oh, you're brave. I'm like, no, I was programmed. I'm like, that could have got me killed. That was stupid. But if I was conscious, if I had the ability to understand consciousness, I would have had the ability, or anyone would have had the ability to walk up to that guy and look him and said, hey, what's going on? Without demeaning in the voice. Like, come on, talk to me. This is presence. And when you stay present, if people were fully conscious and present, somebody would have had the capacity to walk up to that and stop it. If somebody was present, and this is going to be a little uncomfortable, people say, in Hitler's life when he was younger, a lot of people would still be alive. That being said, let the dead bury the dead. Here we are this moment. Don't wait for the incident to happen to become conscious. Simply walk around conscious all day long as best you can, and then watch what happens. You can literally change the course, because we know this. Think about this. How many shootings and killings could there have been, but we'll never know about it because somebody was conscious towards another human being? The news doesn't report that because you don't know it.
I really want to thank you for sharing that, because
you're welcome.
That's not an easy thing to say, because you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
There's so much emotion we attach to these different type
I'm
events.
not blaming anyone that was there.
No.
Because for not doing anything, because we are programmed, and this, what me and Mike are talking about here, is us stepping out of the program. And again, I get caught up in the program all the time.
Absolutely, it's normal. But like what you're just talking about, and those what Frank was doing, that invokes emotion in us. And this is what, the media plays on. This is what pulls on our heartstrings. This is what,
What is the media called?
What do you mean?
Programming.
Oh, yeah, literally.
Think about that. What program are you watching? Now, they don't use that term too much. Years ago, they used the word programming. But who wants to be programmed?
I just want people at home to see that even with an example that invokes emotion, such as that, it's very, very important that Frank and I are trying to drive home. There is another way to look at everything.
Yes.
We just think as soon as something happens, we feel the emotion that our subconscious mind tells us, and we think only this. And we need to stop and realize that there are so many other ways to perceive everything in life.
Yeah.
So we want you to look at every situation from a number of perspectives.
I know the physics behind this. Whatever you attack, what happens?
Oh, it only pushes back more on you. You experience it tenfold.
It builds. So by attacking an attacker, you're creating more stress. So if you look at the field around this, not to blame anybody, but everyone that was there is why the man's knee was on his neck for 9.5 minutes. All right.
Well,
but that individual takes full responsibility for doing it. He does. I'm not saying taking the responsibility. I'm not condoning it, not whatsoever. But you really look at the field of energy.
I don't think anyone could condone what happened.
No.
Ever.
But the thing is,
unacceptable.
Now think about this. Now take this in consideration. There's roughly 8 billion people on the planet. How many times a day, a year, in 10 years does this happen?
All the time. And
but no, it's starting to
disgusting
diminish.
Of ways.
It's starting to diminish.
Oh, but
greatly.
That's a collective conscious awakening.
Because every time this does happen, the news is all over it. How many other stories are like this in the news? And let's just break it down to our country. There's almost 400 million people in this country. How many times has this happened in the last 5 years? Now, one time is too many in my world. But let's go back, I don't know, let's go back to 1776.
Oh, dear God, daily.
Yeah. Let's go back to 1886. Let's go back to 1986. 1986. And here we are in 2021. And back then, the media wasn't even as powerful as getting out the story as it was, but it was happening all the time. It's happening less and less and less. So I want people to realize the energy field is rising. All you need to do is let go and get pulled into the field. It's like being in a raft. If you let go of the branch on the side of the bank, the river will take you on a luscious ride. But if you hold on to it, your arm's going to get tired.
Also, on that same note, one thing that Frank, you've touched on this, I want to say maybe last time or the broadcast before that, but the Mother Teresa, how she said, that she was approached back, when the war was going on, and they said, Vietnam, we'd like to, have you accompany us, and do a march against the war.
Yeah, protest.
And she said, a protest, against the war. Oh, no, I can't be involved in that. But I will tell you this. If you have a protest for peace,
well, march in peace. I'll be the first
you march in
there.
peace. I'll be there.
Yeah.
And to see and hear that is so powerful from such a powerful woman, and it's so cool because that spirit,
she understood the physics of the universe without even having to take a physics course.
Yep.
Because whatever attention you give to something, it expands. And it doesn't matter if it's negative or positive in how you see it. It will always forever expand because the universe is an expanding mechanism.
This is why when we see these, events that invoke racism and these ideas and these thoughts and these feelings and these intense emotions, it's not putting our head in the sand. It's not ignoring what is going on. It's simply...
It's quite the opposite.
Knowing what you want to see grow and putting your attention on that. Rather than focusing on the fight against police brutality, we need to be protesting for unity. We need to be...
You're not even protesting, so you're not testing anything. You're actually going with it. Yeah.
But the march should be for unity with police officers. It should be
unity with everything.
To better understand one another. But we need to take this approach rather than we're against this, we're against that, we're cancel this, we're cancel that.
And let's take it back to a brilliant thing that Eckhart Tolle said. And when he said it, I was like, it was one of these aha moments. You have several of them in your life, and this was one. And he said, the first sign of identification is the first moving into violence. And I'm like, wow, that sounded brilliant, but what does he mean? And then you think about it. The first time I identify myself as me, eventually violence will come out to protect me. But if you have no identification with anything, no violence would ever occur. And once we start identifying, separating groups, violence heightens. But we're all one. Just like my car is all one, but the right tire and the left tire are different, but they must be different. Because if I only had a right tire on my car, it would be non-functional. The pistons are different than the steering wheel. I'm aware of that. The right seat and the left seat are different, but yet they need to be different in order to accommodate what the vehicle actually does. And human existence, whether there's 10,000 people on the planet or 10 billion, for one, the earth can handle that. When we're all different, the most brilliant songs come out. Because you don't need two soul shakers in your spice rack. You only need one. That opens up for another spice. But if it was all salt, what do you got? High sodium. High blood pressure. According to the doctors anyway. So we all want to get to the point where we want to be different. And how do you do that? By not identifying and then shift in. The greatest greatest ensembles of bands of like multitudes of different instruments. Yeah, I could go play in a coffee shop with my guitar and be great. But if I step on a stage and I know another guitarist, a bass player, a singer, somebody on the triangle, somebody on the cowbell, you know, all of a sudden it adds a horn section. But in the horn section you have, 3 different type of brass instruments. But they're all playing one individual song from a different, completely perspective. That's the brilliance of it. Everything is one and separate at the same time, but not through identification. I remember as a kid in music, the teacher would play music. Okay, listen for the triangle. Listen for this. And you had to really listen. Why? Because it was one song. Now I had to go in my mind and had to really separate the piano from the drums and the guitar. Some instruments were, if you were listening to Van Halen, it was easy to separate the guitar, right? Or drums in any rock. But try to separate the rhythm guitar from this, another rhythm guitar. You have to really listen. Oh, okay, he's playing that, and this guy's playing on this.
On acoustic.
Yeah, but you have to separate in the mind. But yet it's one song. So it's not this or that ever. It's this and that. We are one and separate at the same time. So trying to create identification becomes ridiculous when you start to understand this unified field that we all come from.
The dog chasing its own tail.
Yep. But the thing is, I get it because I fall into that every once in a while. Not much as I used to. Years ago, I lived there.
Well, most of us live our entire lives there, and then we get so sick and tired of it that's how we.
Yeah, you either get a gun and put it to your head, or you end up finding another way out. And I don't suggest the gun part because bullets are expensive. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah,
bullets are expensive.
Yeah, it's another reason why not to shoot yourself. But so that's what we're pressing upon. So we go through these other concepts, playing around, step back, because at some level, we're not blaming anybody, we're not pointing fingers at anybody, and we're not condoning the actions of people. It's not about that. We're not forgetting. We're not sticking our head in the sand, but we're just simply asking to step back and really look at it, and you'll know what we're saying is true, and then you'll find your truth in it. We're not telling you how to look at it, how to believe in it, but there's physics here.
The more you go through all this, you understand that what feels right, you'll know. This is how I remember when I'm going, as I go down my journey, my path, everything I assess is a feeling. I go back to, how does this feel? I know truth because I can feel truth in my heart.
Yeah.
And there's just so many layers to this spiritual work, this consciousness, this awakening. There's so many different layers and new aha moments. I love that it's never ending. It never will be, nor would I want it. And
you can express it in multitudes of ways. Like, in other words,
it's beautiful.
It is. And that's what it is like right now, me and Mike are expressing these concepts this way. Joe Dispenza express it's different. But yet we're still talking about the same thing. So trying to see who's better at their expression is ridiculous.
No such thing.
No, there isn't. It's different. Now, me and Mike might attract a different audience than a Joe Dispenza, or they might overlay. We don't know. We're not here to debate that because I know I'm not trying to look for anything. We're just doing it. It's just happening. Yeah, I'm sure Joe Dispenza
does not get up going, this is my target audience. This is what I'm trying to read.
No.
He understands what the mind is.
He didn't write the book saying, this is who I'm capturing. It just happened. And then afterwards, the miraculous thing is like, wow. Like, I could tell you a story, and I have my idea and persona of the story, and then someone comes along and expresses it. It's almost like if somebody composed a piece of music, like Sgt. Pepper, and within a week's time, someone plays it, like Jimi Hendrix, and the Beatles were there watching it as he did this. And from what I understood, the album was only out for like a week, and Jimi Hendrix gets he's some concert hall in England, and the Beatles were there. I think the Stones were there. There's like a bunch of people there. And he starts playing Sgt. Pepper, and even the Beatles were like, what the what? It was the highest form of flattery, and it wasn't, but the Beatles watched their song that they created being played in a way they never thought could be possible. This man just went in with the guitar and just play it, and there's a version out there. You can hear it. But the thing is, Jimi Hendrix was equally enamored by the Beatles version because he wouldn't have played it if he didn't. So, and that's what Jimi Hendrix was. He was enamored by every other musician but himself. It's a very interesting story. It's kind of a sad story. He loved every other, but yeah, people are like, this dude's one of the best guitar players in the world, but he doesn't know it. That's why he was. Once you know it, yeah. So there's always this place, if you're really good at something, you really want to be good at something, don't ever become the best. Or think you're the best, because then you're screwed. Ever hear the story about Eric Clapton?
That's the person.
When Eric Clapton was younger, he was coming out of the Tube. In New York, they call it subways, but in London, they call it the Tube.
The Tube.
The Tube. I like that. This actually is a tube. And he saw Clapton as God, and he felt weird. Like, I remember reading his autobiography, and he goes, he couldn't take it. He didn't want to be known as God because there's nowhere to go. And he had this, like, insecurity. It's like, wow, now they're going to be looking at me. And, like, if you're pretty decent, they're not going to pay too much attention. But once you're God, it's like, oh, my God. And then they're like, oh, he's not really God. And so he got this weird thing. But even Eric Clapton didn't realize how good of a guitar player he was.
That's funny.
Until, and it's interesting because it really is, because that's not the point to focus on. Because I'm not, hey, am I good? It's like, no, I'm just playing. Because good is a perceived understanding. It's not, there's really nothing tangible. There's no litmus test to really put against it other than, wow, oh, that wasn't good. We know when the sour notes come. So we stay present. We don't care for a master. We don't care for great. Because think about it, every master that walked this planet never wore a shirt that said master. They didn't label themselves master. Everyone else did. Einstein didn't label himself a genius. Everyone else did. And he even said, we're all geniuses. But the way I'm explaining the universe to equals MC squared, some 5-year-old kid's doing it the way he's digging up inchworms out of the ground. There is no difference. There's a difference in the action, but there's no difference in the feeling or the expressiveness of the universe. It's just different, but yet it's the same. It's a unified field expressed differently. It's all we're doing. No one has the key over anybody else on how they express the universe. Get present and see how you express the universe. And every day is a new universe. Because you are the universe. It's your version of the one.
This is a one-man show, guys.
Yeah.
It's you, only you, your thoughts, your feelings,
it.
your experiences. It's all mind. It's all thought.
That's it. And we want people to help shift them into perspective, because that's what me and Mike do here.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks for joining us this week, guys.
You got it. Have a good one.
See you next.
Peace.